Comfort has never looked this harmless. It doesn't arrive as failure or weakness. It arrives quietly, disguised as balance, stability, and peace. A routine that feels manageable, a life that doesn't demand too much, a future that looks predictable. And because nothing feels wrong, nothing feels urgent. This is how potential begins to disappear without resistance. Most people believe their biggest enemy is struggle, stress, or uncertainty, but the real danger is reaching a point where nothing pushes back anymore. Comfort does not hurt, which is why it feels safe. And because it feels safe, it is trusted. People tell themselves they have earned it. After years of effort, discipline, and sacrifice, comfort feels like the reward. But what almost no one realizes is that comfort is not a reward, it is a pause. And pauses were never meant to last forever. When comfort becomes permanent, growth quietly stops. Not dramatically, not all at once, just slowly enough that no one notices. Days start repeating, ambitions shrink into routines, curiosity fades into convenience, and because life still feels functional, people assume they are doing fine. They confuse calm with progress. They mistake stability for success. And the most dangerous part is that comfort never announces what it is taking from you. It doesn't demand anything up front. It simply removes urgency. Without urgency, there is no pressure to change. Without pressure, there is no reason to risk. And without risk, potential has nowhere to go. Most people don't fail because they aim too high. They fail because they stop aiming altogether. They settle into lives that are easy to manage but impossible to outgrow. And once comfort becomes the goal, growth starts to feel unnecessary, even irresponsible. That is how comfort destroys potential, not by force, but by permission. Comfort works because it rewrites how people measure success. Instead of asking whether their life is expanding, they ask whether it is manageable. Instead of chasing growth, they chase stability, a predictable income, a familiar routine, a sense of control. These things are not wrong on their own, but when they become the end goal, something dangerous happens. The desire to improve is slowly replaced by the desire to maintain. People stop asking what is possible and start asking what is safe. They begin choosing certainty over upside, familiarity over potential, and convenience over challenge. And because comfort reduces stress, this trade feels intelligent, responsible, mature. Society reinforces it by praising balance and warning against risk. Over time, comfort becomes a moral position. Wanting more starts to feel greedy. Questioning stability starts to feel ungrateful. People convince themselves that ambition is something you outgrow, not something you develop. And so they shrink their dreams to match their comfort instead of expanding their comfort to match their potential. This is how comfort quietly becomes a ceiling, not a soft one, but a fixed one. It sets the maximum height of your life, and anything beyond that starts to feel unnecessary or unrealistic. That is why so many people feel restless even when nothing is wrong. Their life is comfortable, but their potential is trapped. They are not unhappy, but they are not fulfilled. They are not failing, but they are not growing. Comfort does not create misery. It creates a slow suffocation that feels like peace. What makes comfort especially dangerous is that it removes friction, and friction is the only thing that forces adaptation. Growth has always required resistance. Muscles grow by being stressed. Skills grow by being challenged. Thinking grows by being questioned. Comfort removes all of that. It creates an environment where nothing pushes back, and without resistance, nothing adapts. People stay the same while time moves forward. They repeat patterns that once worked, even when those patterns are no longer relevant. Comfort freezes identity. It preserves who you were at the moment you decided to stop struggling. And because life still functions, because bills get paid and routines hold, it becomes easy to believe that this version of yourself is enough. The problem is not that comfort feels good. The problem is that it feels final. It quietly convinces people that they have arrived, when in reality, they have only stopped moving. Over time, discomfort begins to feel threatening. New challenges feel unnecessary. Learning feels inconvenient. Risk feels irresponsible. People start protecting their comfort the way they once protected their goals. They avoid situations that expose weakness. They stay away from environments where they might look inexperienced. They choose paths where outcomes are predictable, even if those outcomes are small. And slowly, potential begins to decay. Not because people are incapable, but because they are no longer willing to be uncomfortable long enough to change. Comfort does not take away ability. It takes away hunger. And once hunger is gone, even talent becomes irrelevant. Comfort also changes how people make decisions, often without them realizing it. Choices are no longer made based on long-term growth, but on short-term ease. The question quietly shifts from, will this expand me? To, will this disturb my current life? Anything that threatens comfort is filtered out before it is even considered. Opportunities that require uncertainty feel like risks. Situations that demand effort feel like stress. Paths that involve learning from scratch feel humiliating. And because comfort feels like something earned, people begin protecting it fiercely. They say they are being realistic. They say they are being practical. They say they are choosing balance. But underneath those words is fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of starting over. Fear of becoming uncomfortable again after finally reaching a place that feels stable. This fear is subtle, but it is powerful. Enough to shrink lives. People don't stop dreaming because they lack imagination. They stop because dreams threaten the comfort they have built. So they compromise. They adjust expectations. They redefine success. They tell themselves that wanting more is childish or irresponsible. And because everyone around them is doing the same thing, it feels normal. Comfort spreads socially. It becomes the standard. Anyone who steps outside it looks reckless, extreme, or unrealistic. Over time, this creates a culture where staying the same is rewarded and changing too much is quietly discouraged. Potential does not disappear because people give up. It disappears because they slowly stop choosing paths that would force them to grow beyond who they already are. What makes comfort even more powerful is that it feels deserved. People tell themselves they have earned the right to relax, to slow down, to stop pushing. After years of effort, discipline, and responsibility, comfort feels like compensation. And in the short term, it is. Rest is necessary. Stability is useful. But comfort becomes dangerous the moment it turns from recovery into residence. When rest stops being a pause and starts becoming a lifestyle, urgency quietly dies. Without urgency, there is no reason to stretch, no reason to experiment, no reason to risk failure. People begin postponing growth indefinitely. They say they will try later, learn later, change later. Later becomes a convenient place where responsibility goes to disappear. And because comfort keeps life smooth, there is no external pressure forcing a decision. No crisis, no collapse, just repetition. Days blend into each other, weeks pass quickly, years feel short. And one day, people look back and realize that nothing major ever changed. Not because they were blocked, but because they were never uncomfortable enough to move. Comfort does not steal time loudly. It dissolves it quietly. It fills life with enough ease to prevent rebellion, but not enough meaning to create fulfillment. That is why so many people feel strangely empty, even when their life looks fine from the outside. Their needs are met, but their potential is unused. And unused potential does not disappear peacefully. It turns into regret. Comfort also changes how people interpret pain. Any discomfort is immediately seen as a problem to be fixed, instead of a signal to be understood. Stress becomes something to avoid, not something to learn from. Difficulty becomes evidence that something is wrong, not evidence that something new is happening. This mindset quietly kills growth, because growth is rarely comfortable at the beginning. Learning feels awkward, building feels uncertain, changing direction feels destabilizing. Comfort teaches people to retreat from these signals instead of leaning into them. They optimize their life to feel smoother, not stronger. Over time, they become very skilled at avoiding discomfort and very weak at handling it. This is why even small challenges start to feel overwhelming. Comfort lowers tolerance. What once felt manageable now feels heavy. What once felt exciting now feels exhausting. And because the discomfort threshold keeps shrinking, people start designing their lives around what they can easily handle, not what they are capable of becoming. This is how comfort quietly rewires ambition. It doesn't kill it outright. It convinces people to aim lower so they can stay comfortable longer. And once ambition is adjusted downward, comfort feels justified, safe, logical, permanent. At some point, comfort begins to demand loyalty. It asks you to protect it at all costs. You start saying no to things that once excited you. You avoid conversations that challenge your thinking. You distance yourself from people who make you feel behind. Not because they are wrong, but because they disturb the version of life you have carefully arranged. Comfort turns growth into a threat. Anything that introduces uncertainty feels like danger. And because comfort feels like stability, people convince themselves that protecting it is the smart choice. They say they are being realistic. They say they are choosing peace. But peace that requires you to shrink is not peace. It is avoidance. Over time, comfort reshapes identity. People stop seeing themselves as someone who is becoming and start seeing themselves as someone who is maintaining. They protect what they have instead of pursuing what they could be. This is when potential quietly expires. Not with failure, but with justification. People explain away their stagnation with logic, with maturity, with responsibility. And because these explanations sound reasonable, no one questions them, not even the person living them. That is the final trick of comfort. It makes staying the same feel like wisdom, even when it is slowly erasing the future you were capable of building. The uncomfortable truth is not that comfort is evil. Comfort is useful. It allows recovery. It provides stability. It gives space to breathe. But comfort was never meant to become a permanent state. The moment comfort becomes something you protect instead of something you use, it starts costing you more than it gives. It takes urgency. It takes hunger. It takes the willingness to be uncomfortable long enough to change. Comfort does not destroy potential in dramatic ways. It does it quietly, by convincing people that they have already arrived. And when you believe you have arrived, there is no reason to keep moving. Life becomes about preservation instead of expansion, about avoiding disruption instead of seeking growth. People don't lose their potential because they are incapable. They lose it because they stop putting themselves in situations that demand more from them. Comfort makes that choice feel reasonable, responsible, mature. And that is why it is so dangerous. Because nothing forces you out of it. There is no breaking point, no obvious failure, just a slow narrowing of possibility. And once you see that clearly, comfort can no longer be blamed or praised. It can only be questioned. Because the final question is not whether comfort is good or bad. The real question is this: if comfort disappeared tomorrow, would you still recognize the person you are becoming? Or would you realize that comfort has been quietly deciding that for you all along?